See, that's the thing that separates us from the animals. The politicians, the fucking law. We hold people accountable.
You sound like one of them.
I am one of them!
Tristan, Damien, thanks so much for joining us.
No worries at all, Charlie.
Tristan, first to you. As the film's co-director, co-writer, co-producer, and star, you seem fairly qualified to explain what the story of Watch the Sunset is all about.
So it's about a bikie gang member on the run from his gang. And basically the story of the one shot takes place an hour after this big incident with the bikie gang happens.
Damien, how did you go about tackling the project?
From day one, that's when I tackled it. So Tristan and I, at the beginning, we went up to Kerrang, which is my hometown where I grew up. And Tristan wanted to shoot a scene up there and saw that the locations were really close to one another and said, I really want to do a shot, like a single take scene. And then he came up with the idea of Watch the Sunset. And then we went away and just said, why don't we shoot the whole thing in one take and we'll just run with that idea.
Deciding to film in one continuous shot is definitely ambitious. How did you go about planning something like that?
Yeah, well, it's a nightmare, to say the least. We basically rehearsed in many different kind of environments, like a play, really, for months beforehand. And then once we got to the actual town that we shot it in, then we kind of had to problem solve a lot of the technical moves. And eventually it all came together, and it was kind of like a dance. The cinematographer had to know his positions, as well as the actors. We get to about 9 different locations in the take, so the timing that other characters would arrive at certain locations was very specific, and as well the lighting had to be specific as we end with the sun in a very crucial location.
The subject is pretty heavy, dealing with drug addiction and murder in a small Aussie town. What made you want to tackle that kind of material?
I don't know if I actually wanted to tackle it. It started from a real story and someone I knew as well, and then kind of evolved into the exact film you see today. But I think once we kind of explored the issues and the characters, it was kind of unescapable. That kind of had to go there in certain areas in the film. And that's partly why we chose to do the one take, is that we wanted the audience to kind of stick with it and not be able to escape this raw, unfolding story.
As if the setup wasn't complex enough, you also threw a child into the mix. Did that make things trickier?
Yeah, it did. And I've worked with a few children before in films, and obviously having the luxury of cutting when working with children is really crucial. But in saying this, that's why the casting process for the character named Joey, which ended up being Annabelle Williamson, we did several rounds of auditions and they were quite physical, and she was just terrific in the end. Like, we didn't actually have to do too much to build the imaginary world. And she, like every other actor, just stuck with it through all the take. And it became this game for her, just like it is while you're acting. And at the end of the take that we got, she's turning and joking with, some of the antagonists in the film. And she very much is a talented young girl. And we were very lucky to find her.
As an actor, how do you get into a state where you're in character for such a long period of time?
It was something we built into the rehearsal process as well, that, once we started, we kind of didn't stop. Throughout the shot, you've got really no choice but to live it, because you don't have that luxury of stopping and going back. And what really helped as well was that you were in constant motion and the objectives of the character are pretty clear. So it was a great experience to prepare as an actor. I built the character off people I knew, so it wasn't so much that I had to be someone else that I would have no experience with. It was based on, friends of mine. And then obviously acting alongside Aaron Walton and Chelsea Zeller just threw me in the mix. And it wasn't hard to be the character when you've got those kind of people there assisting you.
How did you go wearing so many hats on set, particularly when it came to walking the line between directing and acting?
It's tough. It basically came in the reviewing of the footage that a lot of the directing happened. We would rehearse and shoot it all, and then would see where the problems are, or see what wasn't really being transferred in the story to the audience. And that's where we did a lot of the directing. And at the end of the day, with a one take, you have to sacrifice areas because everything isn't going to be perfect. And that's kind of what I ended up liking about the film. So we shot over 7 different days, and we ended up using day 5 as the take we used. But other days had better performance or more exciting performance in areas, and the cinematography wasn't great. But then other days, the cinematography was just like unbelievable, but maybe an actor would screw up once or twice, and so making those decisions in the end were really interesting. And at the end of the day, as a filmmaker, you have to think of the audience and what is going to take them on the journey the best.
Were there times when you were just holding your breath, hoping it would all go to plan so you didn't have to start from the beginning again?
Yeah, actually, the first day we had a bit of a disaster. The gimbal that the camera was mounted on just flipped out. It had like a mechanical issue, and the poor DOP, his heart sank, on the very first day. He just kind of shut his mouth, and the actors kept going, and no one knew about it until after the take. When we reviewed the footage, it was like, oh, well, we can't use this. But, every day was like that. It felt the stakes were so high, and we didn't know we were going to get it. We didn't know until the last day if we had it. It was just purely going out there and just hoping that we could achieve this. And that pressure and the stakes of that, I think, add to it as well. You just got to keep going. And in one of the rehearsals, actually, the police pulled in behind us. And, there I am with, a gun in the car and in character. And luckily, he was after someone ahead of us. But, those moments, your heart sinks. And I suppose, in the reality of that situation, the stakes would be so much more. So it kind of just gave us a taste of what it would be like to actually live the story.
Watch the Sunset has just had its world premiere at the Revelation Perth International Film Festival. You must be really excited to finally get the film out in front of audiences. Yeah,
I'm really stoked. I love this festival, and they always program such interesting films and pioneering films. So yeah, I'm super proud to have the film in there. I'm a bit anxious to see what people think and how they react to it. Like every filmmaker, kind of screening something for the first time is always an anxious wait, but we'll see.
Damien, how do you plan for something like this?
When we went out to one of the local parks out in Melbourne, and we had the little gimbal that we were going to use, or that we were testing, and it wouldn't fit through the door of the car. So we thought, shit, what are we going to do? So we had to downgrade the gimbal. So we had to use the Panasonic GH4 camera in the end. And yeah, so just technically, that's where I sort of said, okay, maybe this is not the best idea.
This is such a different feel to something you'd expect from this genre. There's so many times that the camera is lingering with contemplative shots. Was that deliberate or something which evolved from the one-shot format?
It was deliberate, but at the same time, it happened, So I was really concerned about the film getting too boring, like being in a car the whole time. So the day before we shot the film, I said, we need to get out of the car. We need to get out. So and then we just said, why don't we pass it from the back seat, through the driver window, out the door, get into another car and show an exterior shot of the car. So we really did sort of bounce ideas off each other every night after we did a take. On the first night, first day we shot a take. It was only 48 minutes long. We thought to ourselves, gee, that's not pretty long for a feature film. So we watched Russ's back, and then we said, all right, we've got to just slow down here, got to get in and out of the car here. Let's maybe turn right here in the street. So throwing all of those into the mix really did change the way, I guess, the cinematography could happen.
What could have gone wrong that we didn't see in the film?
After about 78 minutes of holding the camera, the very last shot, I had to do a pan down and then a pan up with the thumb controller on the gimbal. that was the part where I was like, please don't stuff this up. In the meantime, while I'm doing this, I'm having to walk backwards into a cage that's being lifted up by a telescopic handler, which would get me an aerial shot of the character, then to pan up and give the sunset shot, which you will see at the end of the film. The wind blowing on the camera as it was outside the car could have just toppled the gimbal over because the motors weren't too strong on the little gimbal. So we definitely pushed the gimbal to the limit. Sound design, we had Lachlan Wright right beside us, as well as Jesse Fleet, who was the AC on there. They were like right there the whole time. So working with each other in these tiny little spots and like being super critical not to bump the gimbal or just everything. Like technically everything could have gone wrong. We definitely pushed all of our creative power together and come up with this film.
Well, I'm really looking forward to audiences across Australia getting the chance to see this at upcoming film festivals. Thank you so much for joining us, Tristan and Damien. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Charlie. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, matey. Thanks a lot for that, Charlie.